Hello everyone, my name is Fortune Lowell, and if you're new, welcome to the channel, and it's good to meet you. So what we're going to be doing today is something pretty cool, right? So perhaps you want to iterate through your document for this particular reason, right? Like perhaps you want to find a particular element and also its content within, and you might want to extract that data or perhaps count these elements and within your document. Like perhaps you had a large document and it might help you solve a particular bug, right? I'm here to help you in this future perhaps particular situation. And or if you just want to sit around, and it is pretty interesting. So what we're going to do is, like, when this button is clicked, right, it's going to actually iterate through this document and it's going to count these paragraph elements, and it's also going to store their content within, right, which is pretty cool. It's going to actually store this content at an ordered list, which is really neat. So from start to bottom, which will be helpful. So I just have a simple HTML file, just boilerplate code, but notice how we just have a paragraph element within this is text, is this is a paragraph, and then a paragraph inside a div, and then a button underneath to click. Okay, so what we want to do is we're going to query this button, right? We're going to actually ask the document, so like document dot get elements by class name. I want to use double quotes for button. You can use single quotes if you wish, it's just a preference. And so the first button within the document, which add an event listener of click, and pass this arrow function please when this button is clicked, right? And this arrow function has an object, right? And what this object is going to have is pretty interesting stuff. So what we're going to want to do first is assign all paras. So document dot, so assign paragraph, all the paragraphs in the document with this variable that we're also declaring. And notice that it doesn't have to be all paragraphs, right? It could be any particular element within the document. But for this exercise, it's paragraphs. So we also want to get the count, and like its default is going to be 0, and also the content, right? So we need to store this content somewhere, and we want to store it in this variable here. So in this variable, and that's why we've assigned an empty string right here, an empty string. So all the paragraphs content is going to be assigned within this string and assigned to this variable later on, you see. So I'm actually going to use const here, right? Just because it's like it's the same as let, like it does allow us it does allow the variable that we're declaring with to not be reused again, but it's just more verbose, and it will allow us to be more controlling of this variable, since it's gonna particularly hold the elements that is in question, right? So perhaps we're ready to create this for loop, right? So we need this iteration for each. So we're gonna create a for loop. So that's gonna simply say let I, so when I is equal to 0, which it is, I is less than all paragraphs dot length, and then increment I by 1 for each for loop, and then using const again, assign declare node while also assigning it all paragraphs of I, which then allows us to perhaps just assign content, right? Remember this content variable that we declared beforehand. We're ready to actually assign to itself while also assigning these query objects of the count. So we want to know the count of paragraphs within the document, but also its content, right? We need this content to see what's going on within our document. It's really cool. So we can just say node, text node, the text within the all paragraphs of I, which in with each for loop, and perhaps a line break for each element content. So like first element, line break, second, line break, third, and you get the idea. So now perhaps let's alert, right? Let's alert this interesting data using the variables that we declared, right? So we could say we found this many paragraphs, and the content is line break. Thank you very much. This object, so node and semicolon, and that's simply it. One refresh, and semicolon there, and click me. Okay, well actually it's not clicking. You might be able to guess why not. It's not clicking, right? Because what we have done here is we're saying simply to the document, so get all the elements, so all the elements by tag name, particularly the first button right within the document, and apply an event listener on and off click. So when it's clicked, pass this arrow function which contains an object, and what this object has is assigning what it's doing is assigning all the paragraphs to this variable, and then the content, and then the count also, right? And also assigning nothing to the count, but assigning one by default to the count, but assigning nothing, just something is an empty string. It's just like an empty box to content, and then 0 to the count, right? And then simply create this for loop. So for let I is equal to 0, and then I is less than all paragraphs dot length, right? And then simply saying, so what we're doing is actually iterating through the document in this for loop. So for each paragraph, it's going to be assigned that we find, it's going to be assigned to this variable, and then count while assigning to itself the count, subtraction of the content.text, and just a line break also. And then we want to alert this piece of information, so found, and it looks good. It looks good, right? No, because we need node has no use for us anymore, right? We need content. Content has the information. Content actually has node, right? It has the subtraction of the count and node, and all assigned to this variable. So we need content. Okay, good guess. I know you got it right. So, but no, there's something actually missing now as well. So like notice, yeah, the first is this paragraph. That's the first one. That's the first content within the element in question. This is the paragraph. And then the second is paragraphs inside a div. But notice how it's actually not giving us our order list. We have no clue where this, like perhaps we have this document really large, right? We wouldn't know where this content is coming from. Like we would know where it's coming from, it's in the document, but we wouldn't know the order of this content, right? So what we need to do is for each for loop, we need to count, like we need to increment by 1 for each for loop, just like we're incrementing by 1 for each paragraph that we find within the document, which is pretty easy, right? All we need to say is to say count. You've guessed it, correct. And once we have that, well then we're ready to refresh and refresh it through our browser and click. And there we go. There we have it, folks. And notice how if I just say this is another paragraph, and then click, and see now we have 3 paragraphs within the document, and their content is as such. So it's just simple code. It's really simple. You might even be able to guess it for when this particular error occurs, and you might even want to just test it out right now. So I really suggest you do. It's really fun. That's why I wanted to share with you guys. It's really fun, and perhaps you might use it in the future to extract data from your other documents, or to count specific elements and want to know their content within. So it will be pretty helpful in that case. And thank you very much for having me, and have a great day, folks. Have a really nice day. Bye.